Stop. Right now. Before you react. Before you panic. Before you tell yourself, I can't handle this. Because the truth is this. You don't lose in life because situations are hard. You lose because your mind loses control first. Pressure, stress, fear, unexpected problems. They don't defeat you by themselves. They win only when your mind gives up. And today this story is about how to take that power back. Every situation you face hits your mind before it hits reality. That's something most people don't realize until they've lived through enough moments of pressure, disappointment, and struggle. On the surface, it looks like life just happens to you. A problem shows up. A mistake happens. A plan falls apart. And it feels like the situation itself is what defeats you. But if you slow it down, if you look closely at what actually happens inside you, you'll see the truth. Long before the situation takes shape in the real world, it takes shape in your mind. The mind reacts first. It interprets. It judges. It predicts outcomes. It tells a story. And that story decides everything that comes next. Before you fail externally, you fail internally. Failure doesn't usually begin with action. It begins with a thought. A quiet thought that says, this is too much. Or, I'm not ready for this. Or, I always mess things up. These thoughts don't shout. They whisper. And because they sound familiar, because they sound like your own voice, you believe them. In that moment, nothing has actually gone wrong yet. The problem is still manageable. The situation is still open. But internally you've already stepped back. You've already lowered your expectations. You've already prepared yourself to lose. And once that happens, your actions follow that belief. You hesitate. You rush. You avoid. You make smaller decisions. And later, when the outcome isn't what you wanted, it looks like the situation beat you. But in reality, the mind gave up first. Before you quit physically, you quit mentally. Think about how quitting really happens. It's rarely dramatic. It's not always someone throwing their hands up and walking away. Most of the time, quitting is subtle. It's losing intensity. It's doing the bare minimum. It's telling yourself, I'll try again tomorrow. It's showing up without belief. The body can handle far more than the mind thinks it can. But once the mind decides something is pointless, the body follows. Energy drops. Focus fades. Effort weakens. And slowly you disconnect from what you're doing. From the outside, it looks like you tried and failed. From the inside, you know the truth. You stopped believing before you stopped moving. This is why two people can face the same situation and have completely different outcomes. Put them in the same room. Give them the same challenge. Apply the same pressure. One person breaks. The other grows stronger. The difference is not luck. It's not intelligence. It's not background. It's not even experience all the time. It's mental control. The person who breaks isn't weaker as a human being. They're not less capable. They're simply letting the situation control their internal state. Their thoughts spiral. Their emotions take over. Their focus scatters. And under that mental weight, everything feels heavier than it really is. The person who grows stronger is doing something different internally. They're not denying the difficulty. They feel the pressure too. Their heart races. Their mind tightens. They feel the same fear, the same uncertainty. But they don't let those feelings decide the outcome. They stay present. They stay grounded. They keep their attention on what they can control. That's mental control. Mental control doesn't mean being emotionless. It doesn't mean pretending you're confident when you're not. It means you don't let your emotions write the story for you. You acknowledge them, but you don't obey them blindly. Every situation tests this. A mistake at work. A conflict with someone you care about. A setback you didn't see coming. A moment where things don't go according to plan. In each of these moments, the mind asks a question before you even realize it. How do I interpret this? If you interpret it as a personal failure, you shrink. If you interpret it as proof you're not good enough, you retreat. If you interpret it as a disaster, you panic. But if you interpret it as information, something changes. If you interpret it as a challenge, your posture shifts. If you interpret it as a moment to learn, you stay engaged. The situation hasn't changed. Only the interpretation has. And interpretation shapes response. How you handle pressure works the same way. Pressure itself is neutral. It's just demand. It's just responsibility. But the mind turns pressure into either fuel or fear. When pressure appears, an untrained mind says, I can't handle this. A trained mind says, this is uncomfortable, but I'm still here. That difference sounds small, but it's massive. One response collapses under pressure. The other adapts to it. Pressure doesn't destroy people. Panic does. Staying calm or collapsing isn't about personality. It's about conditioning. It's about what your mind has practiced over time. If your mind is used to reacting, rushing, and assuming the worst, then pressure feels overwhelming. But if your mind is used to pausing, breathing, and focusing on the next step, pressure becomes manageable. Mental control is not built in big moments. It's built in small ones. It's built when you slow down instead of snapping back. When you take a breath instead of reacting. When you choose clarity over chaos. When you speak to yourself with strength instead of criticism. Most people don't realize how much power they give away to their own thoughts. They believe every thought that appears. They assume every fear is a warning. They treat every negative feeling as a sign that something is wrong. But thoughts are not commands. Feelings are not facts. They are signals. And signals can be understood without being obeyed. When something goes wrong, the mind often jumps to extremes. This always happens. I never get it right. This is the end. Those thoughts feel convincing in the moment. They sound logical when emotions are high. But they are rarely accurate. They are shortcuts the brain takes under stress. Mental control is the ability to notice those shortcuts and slow them down. It's the ability to say, I don't need to decide this right now. I don't need to judge myself in this moment. I can take this one step at a time. That internal dialogue matters more than most people think. Because the way you talk to yourself under pressure becomes your reality. If your inner voice is harsh, impatient, and fearful, every situation feels heavier. Every mistake feels personal. Every challenge feels like proof you're failing. But if your inner voice is steady, honest, and supportive, the same situations feel different. Not easy but possible. This is why growth often looks like calmness under stress. Not because the person doesn't care, but because they've learned to regulate their internal world. They don't waste energy fighting the situation in their head. They save that energy for solving the problem in front of them. Mental control also shows up in how long you stay stuck. When something goes wrong, some people get trapped in it mentally. They replay it over and over. They imagine different outcomes. They blame themselves or others. Hours pass, sometimes days, and the situation is long gone, but the mind is still fighting it. Others feel the same sting, but they don't stay there. They process it. They reflect. They extract the lesson. And then they move forward. Again, same situation. Different internal response. The difference is not luck. It's training. Your mind is like a muscle. If it's never trained, it reacts wildly under load. If it's trained, it stabilizes. And training doesn't mean forcing positivity or ignoring pain. It means practicing awareness. Awareness of your thoughts. Awareness of your reactions. Awareness of the moment when your mind starts to drift toward collapse. In that moment, you have a choice. You can let the spiral continue. Or you can interrupt it. Interrupting doesn't mean suppressing. It means redirecting. Bringing your attention back to what's real, what's controllable, what's immediate. Right now, what can I do? Right now, what matters? Right now, what is the next step? These questions ground you. They pull you out of the imagined future where everything goes wrong and back into the present where you still have influence. This is how mental control turns into external results. When your mind stays steady, your actions stay effective. When your actions stay effective, outcomes improve. And when outcomes improve, confidence grows. Not the fake confidence that comes from pretending. The real confidence that comes from knowing you can handle yourself under pressure. That kind of confidence doesn't shout. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't panic when things don't go as planned. It adapts. Life will always present situations you didn't choose. Unexpected challenges. Uncomfortable moments. Pressure that arrives without warning. You can't control that. But you can control how deeply those situations shake you. Every time you choose calm over panic, you strengthen your mind. Every time you choose clarity over chaos, you reinforce control. Every time you stay present instead of collapsing mentally, you grow stronger. And over time, this compounds. You start to notice that things which once overwhelmed you now feel manageable. Situations that used to break you now shape you. Challenges that once made you doubt yourself now confirm your resilience. Not because life got easier, but because your mind got stronger. That is the real victory. Because when you master your internal world, the external world loses its power to control you. Every situation you face hits your mind before it hits reality. And when your mind is trained, steady, and aware, reality becomes something you can handle one moment at a time. Most people don't train their minds. They let their minds react. And because of that, their days don't really belong to them. They belong to whatever happens next. A problem appears, and panic takes over before they even understand the situation. A mistake happens and self-doubt rushes in like it was waiting behind the door. A delay occurs and frustration builds, even though nothing truly bad has happened yet. Life doesn't even have to hit hard. Small things are enough. A late reply, a missed opportunity, a plan that doesn't go exactly right. And suddenly the mind is no longer calm. It's racing, assuming, exaggerating. Not because the situation is unbearable, but because the mind was never trained to handle it. So emotions step in. And emotions start driving decisions. When emotions lead, logic steps back. You say things you didn't mean to say. You make choices you later regret. You react in ways that don't match who you want to be. Anger makes decisions fast. Fear makes decisions small. Frustration makes decisions careless. And the worst part is, in the moment, those decisions feel justified. You feel right. You feel certain. You feel like you're protecting yourself. But later, when the emotion fades, you see the damage. A relationship strained. An opportunity lost. Confidence shaken. And you wonder, why did I react like that? The answer is simple but uncomfortable. Because your mind was never trained to pause. An untrained mind magnifies problems. It turns a setback into a catastrophe. It turns a comment into an attack. It turns uncertainty into fear. It fills in the blanks with worst-case scenarios. It assumes intentions that were never confirmed. It creates stories that feel real even when they aren't. You replay moments over and over. You imagine conversations that never happened. You argue with people in your head while lying in bed at night. The problem itself might be small, but the mind makes it heavy. And carrying that weight every day is exhausting. A trained mind is different. A trained mind doesn't pretend problems don't exist. It doesn't deny emotions. It doesn't try to be positive all the time. A trained mind manages. It sees the problem and says, let's slow down. It feels the emotion and says, you're allowed to be here but you don't get to decide. It notices the reaction and creates space before acting. That space changes everything. Because inside that space you regain control. Think about how often your mind reacts without asking permission. One notification changes your mood. One unexpected issue shifts your entire day. One thought spirals into 10. You didn't choose those reactions. They happened automatically. That's not because you're weak. It's because reactions are untrained habits. The mind does what it practices. If it practices panic, it panics easily. If it practices doubt, it doubts quickly. If it practices frustration, it becomes frustrated often. The mind doesn't care if the habit hurts you. It only cares if it's familiar. Training the mind doesn't mean controlling every thought. That's impossible. Thoughts will come. Emotions will rise. Triggers will exist. Training the mind means deciding what you do next. Do you let the thought take over or do you observe it? Do you let the emotion drive or do you let it pass? Do you react instantly or do you pause? That pause is the difference between chaos and clarity. Most people live without that pause. They wake up already mentally tired. They carry yesterday's emotions into today. They react to life like it's attacking them even when it isn't. They think they need motivation. They think they need confidence. They think they need better circumstances. But what they really need is mental discipline. Not harsh discipline. Not force. Awareness. A trained mind notices patterns. It notices how panic always shows up before action. It notices how self-doubt appears after mistakes. It notices how frustration comes from expectations, not reality. And once you notice a pattern, it loses some of its power. Because now it's not happening to you blindly. You're watching it happen. There's a moment, usually quiet, when this shift begins. You catch yourself reacting. Your heart speeds up. Your thoughts rush. And for the first time, instead of being pulled into it, you pause. You breathe. You don't fix anything yet. You don't respond yet. You just notice. This is panic. This is doubt. This is frustration. And something surprising happens. The emotion softens. Not because you fought it, but because you didn't feed it. Emotions are terrible leaders. They were never meant to lead. They were meant to inform. Fear can alert you. Anger can signal boundaries. Sadness can point to loss. But when emotions sit in the driver's seat, they crash the vehicle. They don't see long-term consequences. They don't care about tomorrow. They don't think clearly. They react. And reaction is expensive. A trained mind puts emotions in the passenger seat. You still feel them. You still acknowledge them. But you don't hand them the steering wheel. You say, I hear you. But I'm choosing how to respond. That choice creates stability. When the mind is trained, problems shrink. Not because life gets easier, but because your response gets stronger. A delay becomes an adjustment, not a disaster. A mistake becomes feedback, not a verdict. A problem becomes a situation to manage, not a reason to panic. The same life. a different inner experience. This is why mastering your mind is not optional. You can have skills but lose them to panic. You can have intelligence but waste it through emotional decisions. You can have opportunities but miss them because fear spoke louder than reason. Without mental mastery, everything else becomes unstable. Your focus, your discipline, your relationships, your confidence. They all depend on how well you manage your inner world. A trained mind doesn't mean you never struggle. It means you struggle with awareness. You still feel overwhelmed sometimes. You still have moments of doubt. You still get frustrated. But those moments don't own you. They pass. And you remain steady. Think about the strongest people you know. Not the loudest. Not the angriest. Not the most dramatic. The calm ones. The ones who pause before speaking. The ones who don't explode under pressure. The ones who stay grounded when things go wrong. That strength isn't personality. It's training. Mental training happens in small moments. When something goes wrong and you choose to breathe instead of panic. When you make a mistake and choose learning instead of self-attack. When plans change and you choose patience instead of frustration. Every one of those moments is a repetition. And repetitions shape the mind. An untrained mind asks, why is this happening to me? A trained mind asks, what's the best response right now? That question alone can change a life. Because it shifts you from victim to decision maker. Most people don't realize how much power they give away daily. To situations. To people. To emotions. They live as if their inner state depends on outer conditions. A trained mind reverses that. It understands that peace, focus, and clarity are internal skills. Skills that can be built. This doesn't happen overnight. Just like physical strength, mental strength builds gradually. One pause at a time. One calm response at a time. One conscious decision at a time. And slowly the mind changes. Not because life stopped being hard, but because you stop being reactive. Eventually you notice something powerful. Problems still appear but they don't overwhelm you. Mistakes still happen but they don't define you. Delays still occur but they don't steal your peace. You're no longer living at the mercy of your emotions. You're leading them. That's what mastery looks like. Not control. Not suppression. Leadership. Most people don't train their minds. They let their minds react. But you don't have to live that way. A problem can appear without panic. A mistake can happen without self-doubt. A delay can occur without frustration. Because emotions don't have to drive decisions. And when they stop leading, clarity takes its place. An untrained mind magnifies problems. A trained mind manages them. That's why mastering your mind isn't optional. It's essential. Because your life doesn't rise to the level of your goals. It falls to the level of your mental training. Your mind listens to you more than anyone else. It's listening when you wake up in the morning and the first thought passes through your head before your feet touch the floor. It's listening when something goes wrong and you sigh quietly to yourself. It's listening in moments no one else ever hears, when you're alone, tired, frustrated, or unsure. And the strange thing is, you don't have to speak out loud for it to hear you. Every sentence you repeat inside your head slowly becomes a belief. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But patiently. You say things like, I always mess up. You whisper, I can't handle pressure. You think, this is too much for me. At first, they feel like temporary reactions. Just words. Just thoughts. Just a bad moment. But your mind doesn't treat them as temporary. Your mind treats repetition as instruction. Say something long enough and your brain stops questioning it. It stops checking whether it's true. It stops asking for evidence. It simply accepts it as fact. And once your brain accepts something as truth, it begins to act like it. Think about how this shows up in real life. You make a small mistake at work. Maybe you miss a detail or forget to reply to something on time. It's not the end of the world. Anyone could have done it. But your inner voice jumps in immediately. See? I always mess up. The next time you're under pressure, your body remembers that sentence. Your chest tightens faster. Your confidence drops quicker. Your mind starts looking for mistakes before you've even made them. Not because you're incapable, but because your brain is trying to stay consistent with the story you keep telling it. Pressure comes up again. A deadline. A difficult conversation. A responsibility that feels heavy. And your mind says, I can't handle pressure. You don't even stop to challenge it. Feels familiar. Comfortable in a strange way. Like an old habit. So your body reacts accordingly. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your thoughts race. You feel overwhelmed before you've even started. Not because the situation is impossible, but because your brain has already decided how this story ends. Sometimes the sentence is quieter. This is too much for me. You say it when life piles up, when responsibilities stack, when emotions mix together and you don't know which one to address first. And your brain listens. It hears too much. It hears danger. It hears shut down. So it does what it thinks it's supposed to do. It freezes you. It drains your energy. It makes everything feel heavier than it actually is. Again, not because you're weak, but because your mind believes it's protecting you. This is how beliefs are built. Not in big moments. Not through logic or facts, but through repeated language. The words you say to yourself become the lens through which you see every challenge. And if that lens is harsh, everything looks harder. Here's the part most people don't realize. Your brain doesn't care whether the words are kind or cruel. It doesn't care whether they help or hurt you. It only cares that they're familiar. Familiar equals safe. So even if a belief limits you, if you repeat it often enough, your brain will cling to it. That's why changing your mindset feels uncomfortable at first. You're not just changing words. You're challenging something your brain has accepted as truth. But here's the good news. The same way your mind learned these patterns, it can relearn new ones. You can retrain it. Not overnight. Not with fake positivity. Not by pretending everything is easy. But by changing the language, slowly, honestly, intentionally. It starts in small moments. The next time you mess up, instead of saying, "I always mess up," you pause. You feel the frustration. You don't deny it. And then you say something slightly different. "I can learn from this." It doesn't feel magical. It doesn't erase the mistake. But it changes the direction of the story. Your brain hears learning instead of failure. And learning invites movement, not shutdown. When pressure shows up again and your old sentence tries to take control, you notice it. "I can't handle pressure." Instead of letting it run the show, you replace it with something grounded. "I'll handle this step by step." That sentence does something important. It removes the idea that everything must be solved at once. Your brain relaxes just enough to focus on the next small action. And small actions are manageable. When life feels heavy and your mind says, "This is too much for me," you don't argue with it. You respond, "I've survived worse." That sentence carries memory. It carries evidence. It reminds your brain of strength you've already shown. And suddenly the situation doesn't disappear, but it feels less threatening. These shifts might seem small, but your brain responds to consistency, not intensity. Every time you choose a different sentence, you're sending a new signal. This is how we talk now. This is how we interpret stress. This is how we see ourselves. At first, your brain resists. The old language feels more natural, more automatic, more believable. The new words feel awkward, forced, almost fake. That's normal, because you're teaching your mind something unfamiliar. And unfamiliar always feels uncomfortable before it feels true. Think of it like this. If you've walked the same mental path for years, it's worn down. Easy to follow. Automatic. The new path is overgrown. Quiet. Harder to find. But every time you choose it, you clear it just a little more. Over time, something shifts. You notice your reactions changing. You still feel stress, but you don't spiral as fast. You still feel pressure, but you don't collapse under it. You still make mistakes, but they don't define you. Not because life got easier, but because your inner language changed. Your brain starts responding differently under stress. Instead of panic, it looks for options. Instead of shutdown, it looks for steps. Instead of self-attack, it looks for solutions. This doesn't make you fearless. It makes you steadier. There will still be days when the old sentences come back. Days when you're tired. Days when you're overwhelmed. Days when it feels easier to fall into familiar self-talk. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you're human. Retraining your mind isn't about never thinking negative thoughts again. It's about noticing them sooner and choosing what comes next. You don't need to shout affirmations. You don't need to convince yourself everything is fine. You just need language that helps instead of hurts. Language that supports action instead of paralysis. Language that treats you like someone worth guiding, not attacking. Because your mind is always listening. It listens when you doubt yourself. It listens when you encourage yourself. It listens when you speak with patience. It listens when you speak with cruelty. And it builds your future quietly, sentence by sentence. So choose your words carefully. Not perfectly. Not dramatically. Just intentionally. Because when you change the language you live with every day, you change how your brain responds under stress. And that changes how you show up when it matters most. Winning doesn't come from reacting fast. That idea feels almost wrong at first, especially in a world that rewards speed. Fast replies. Fast decisions. Fast reactions. You're taught, directly and indirectly, that hesitation is weakness. that pausing means you're unsure, that the person who responds first has control. So you learn to react quickly. You answer messages immediately even when you don't know what to say. You respond to criticism before you've fully understood it. You make decisions while emotions are still loud, while your heart is still racing, while your thoughts are tangled. It feels powerful in the moment, like you're staying ahead, like you're not letting life push you around. But later, when things calm down, you replay the moment in your head. You wish you'd waited. You wish you'd said it differently. You wish you hadn't reacted at all. You start noticing a pattern. The moments you regret most didn't come from thinking too slowly. They came from reacting too fast. Real winning doesn't look dramatic. It doesn't look loud. It doesn't announce itself in the moment. It comes from pausing. Between what happens and how you respond, there is a moment. Most people miss it. It's small, almost invisible. A fraction of a second where you feel the surge of emotion rise in your chest, where your body tightens, where your mind jumps to conclusions, where your ego feels threatened or your fear feels exposed. That moment is where everything is decided. If you rush past it, emotion takes the wheel. Old habits take over. Past wounds speak for you. You say what feels good now, not what serves you later. But if you catch that moment, if you stay inside it just a little longer, something changes. You pause. At first, pausing feels uncomfortable. Your mind wants release. It wants action. It wants to defend, explain, attack, justify, or escape. Silence feels risky. Waiting feels like losing control. But the truth is the opposite. The pause is where control begins. You breathe. Not deeply, not perfectly. Just enough to slow the body down. Just enough to interrupt the emotional surge before it fully takes over. Your shoulders drop slightly. Your jaw loosens. Your thoughts slow from a sprint to a walk. You think, not about how to win the argument. Not about how to protect your pride. But about what's actually happening. What was said. What you felt. Why it triggered you. What outcome you actually want. That pause breaks emotional control. Because emotions are powerful when they move unchecked. They feed on speed. They grow stronger when you react immediately. They convince you that whatever you feel in that moment is urgent and true. But emotions lose power when they're observed. When you pause, you create distance between yourself and the feeling. You stop being inside the emotion and start looking at it. And that's where logic enters. Logic doesn't mean being cold. It doesn't mean ignoring how you feel. It means letting understanding join the conversation instead of letting emotion speak alone. Logic asks quieter questions. Is this worth responding to right now? Will this matter tomorrow? What response protects my peace? What response aligns with who I'm trying to become? Those questions don't show up when you're reacting. They only appear when you slow down enough to hear them. When logic enters, control returns. Not control over the situation. Not control over other people. But control over yourself. And that changes everything. You start noticing how different life feels when you don't react instantly. Arguments don't escalate as quickly. Conversations feel less tense. You walk away from situations without that heavy regret sitting in your chest. You feel calmer, not because life is easier but because you're no longer adding chaos to it. There are moments when someone says something sharp, something unnecessary, something meant to provoke. The old version of you would jump in immediately, matching tone for tone, heat for heat. Now you pause. You feel the urge. You don't deny it. You just don't obey it. You breathe. You think. You choose. Sometimes you respond calmly. Sometimes you don't respond at all. Sometimes you say, I need time to think about this, instead of forcing an answer. And you realize something important. Silence is not weakness. Pausing is not losing. Thinking before speaking is not fear. It's discipline. It's strength. It's the kind of control that doesn't need to prove itself. Winning, you begin to understand, isn't about dominating the moment. It's about mastering yourself within it. You think back to moments in your life that truly mattered. Decisions that shaped your direction. Relationships that survived because you chose patience. Conflicts that ended peacefully because you didn't let emotion drive. Those moments didn't come from reacting fast. They came from pausing. The pause is where maturity lives. It's where growth happens quietly. It's where you stop being controlled by old patterns and start responding from intention. At first, you forget sometimes. You still react. You still get pulled into emotional responses. And that's okay. This isn't about perfection. It's about awareness. Over time, the pause becomes more natural. You catch yourself earlier. You feel the emotional surge sooner. You recognize the moment before it slips away. And each time you choose the pause, you strengthen it. Like a muscle. You don't need to win every conversation. You don't need to prove yourself in every situation. You don't need to respond to everything that happens to you. You need to protect your clarity, because clarity leads to better decisions. Better decisions lead to better outcomes. And better outcomes are what winning actually looks like. Quiet wins. Internal wins. Wins that don't require validation. You start noticing that people who truly seem powerful are not the loudest ones. They're the calmest. They don't rush. They don't react to every provocation. They don't let emotions push them into decisions they'll later regret. They pause. And in that pause they choose wisely. Between what happens and how you respond, there is a moment. That moment decides everything. It decides whether the day spirals or settles. It decides whether a relationship fractures or strengthens. It decides whether you feel proud later or disappointed in yourself. Pause. Breathe. Think. Let the emotion pass through instead of taking over. Let logic step in instead of staying silent. Let control return to where it belongs. Winning doesn't come from reacting fast. It comes from mastering the pause. And once you learn to pause, you realize you were never trying to control the world. You were learning to control yourself. That's where real power has been waiting all along. Motivation is emotional. It comes like a wave and leaves just as fast. One day you feel unstoppable, you make plans, you promise yourself big changes, and you can almost taste the new life you want. Then the next day feels ordinary. Your energy is lower. Your mood is different. The same goal that felt exciting yesterday suddenly feels heavy today. That's the tricky thing about motivation. It depends on how you feel, and feelings change. They change with sleep, stress, weather, a message you read, a memory that hits you at the wrong time. If your whole life depends on motivation, your progress will always be fragile, because your emotions will never stay perfectly steady. Discipline is different. Discipline is mental. It's not a burst of excitement. It's not a high. It's a quiet decision that happens even when your emotions aren't cooperating. Discipline is the part of you that can look at discomfort and still move forward. It's the part that says, I don't need to feel ready to start. And when you begin to understand that, something shifts inside you. You stop waiting for a mood to save you. You stop treating your feelings like instructions. You start treating them like information, something you can notice without obeying. Your mind becomes strong when you do hard things consistently, even when you don't feel like it. Not once. Not twice. Consistently. Because the mind learns the same way the body does, through repetition. One hard thing doesn't make you strong. It just makes you tired. But hard things repeated in small, honest doses, those build you. Those teach your brain a new truth: I can handle discomfort. And that truth becomes a kind of calm power. It changes how you walk through your day. It changes how you handle pressure. It changes what you believe about yourself. Think about how many times you've told yourself, I'll do it when I feel like it. It sounds reasonable. It sounds gentle. But if you're honest, you know where it often leads. It leads to delay. To another day passing. To you thinking about change more than you actually living it. And the worst part isn't even the time you lose. The worst part is the trust you lose with yourself. Every time you promise and don't follow through, something inside you quietly notes it. Your brain begins to doubt your words. Your confidence starts shrinking, not because you're incapable, but because you keep teaching yourself that your intentions don't turn into action. Discipline rebuilds that trust. It does it in the smallest moments. In the moments nobody sees. When your alarm goes off and your body begs for comfort, discipline is you sitting up anyway. Not because you feel motivated, but because you decided last night that you matter enough to keep your promise today. You don't do it perfectly. You might feel slow, irritated, half asleep. But you get up. And that single action sends a message deeper than any motivational quote ever could. I can rely on myself. That message is a brick. And over time, those bricks become a foundation. Wake up when it's uncomfortable. That sentence sounds simple until you're in it. Until it's dark outside and warm under the blanket. Until you remember how tired you are, how much you've been carrying, how easy it would be to negotiate with yourself. Just 10 more minutes. I'll start tomorrow. I deserve rest. And sometimes rest is true. Sometimes you do need rest. But discipline is learning the difference between genuine rest and avoidance disguised as comfort. Discipline is feeling the pull of the easy choice and choosing what serves you long-term instead of what soothes you for 10 minutes. Finish what you start. This is another quiet battlefield. Because starting is emotional. Starting feels exciting. Starting makes you feel like a new person. But finishing is mental. Finishing is what happens when the excitement fades and the work becomes plain. When the task gets boring, when progress feels slow, when you're not getting praise. Finishing is you staying with the thing anyway. Not because it's fun, but because you respect yourself. And finishing doesn't always mean huge accomplishments. Sometimes it just means you complete the small version of the habit you promised. You do the minimum instead of doing nothing. You keep the chain alive. You prove to yourself that you don't disappear when it gets dull. Show up even when no one is watching. That's where discipline becomes real. Because it's easy to perform when people are paying attention. It's easy to push when you're being judged or praised. But when it's just you, alone with your choices, discipline becomes a private promise. A private standard. You do the right thing not because it looks impressive, but because you know it's shaping you. You understand that your life isn't built on the days you feel inspired. It's built on the days you feel ordinary and still choose to show up. Each disciplined action strengthens your mental muscles. And like any muscle, it doesn't grow from one big effort. It grows from repeated resistance. Every time you do what's hard, you stretch your capacity. You train your brain to tolerate discomfort without panicking. You train yourself to hold steady when your emotions want to run. You're teaching your mind that discomfort isn't an emergency. That tiredness isn't a command. That anxiety doesn't have to be the driver. This training might not look impressive to anyone else, but inside you, it's changing the way your nervous system responds to life. Over time, you start noticing small differences. You don't spiral as quickly. You don't overreact as easily. You don't collapse the moment something goes wrong. Because you've been practicing pressure in controlled ways. You've been doing difficult things on purpose. So when life throws difficulty at you, it doesn't feel as shocking. Feels familiar. Not enjoyable, but familiar. And familiarity creates calm. Calm creates clarity. Clarity creates better decisions. A disciplined mind doesn't panic easily. It doesn't mean you never feel fear. It means fear doesn't control you the way it used to. It means when something unexpected happens, you don't immediately fall apart. You breathe. You think. You respond. Because you built a habit of staying steady. You've built proof that you can handle hard moments without escaping. You've built trust in your ability to endure discomfort and keep moving. And the best part is this: discipline doesn't require you to be special. It doesn't require perfect circumstances. It doesn't require a perfect mood. It only requires a decision you make again and again. A decision to keep your word. A decision to do the hard thing in a small way. A decision to show up even when it's quiet, even when it's uncomfortable, even when no one will clap for you. Because you're not doing it for applause. You're doing it for the person you want to become. Motivation will come and go. That's normal. Let it. But don't build your life on something that changes with your mood. Build it on discipline. Build it on actions you can repeat. Build it on the quiet strength of showing up, finishing what you start, and choosing what serves you long-term. Because every time you do that, you strengthen your mind. And a strong mind doesn't panic easily. It stays. It steadies. It moves forward. What you focus on grows. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but it quietly shapes everything you experience. Your days. Your emotions. Your reactions. Your future. Most of us don't realize it because focus works silently. It doesn't announce itself. It just keeps feeding whatever you point it toward. Think about the last time fear took over your thoughts. Maybe it was a worry about money, a relationship, your health, or something you couldn't control. At first, it was just a single thought. A small question. A what if? But you stayed with it. You replayed it. You imagined outcomes that hadn't happened. And before you knew it, fear wasn't just a thought anymore. It became a feeling. Heavy. Loud. Constant. Fear grew because it was fed. The mind doesn't know the difference between real danger and imagined danger. It responds to attention. Whatever you give energy to, it assumes is important. Necessary. Urgent. So when you focus on fear, your mind does exactly what it's designed to do. It amplifies it. It scans for more reasons to worry. It builds stories. It connects dots that don't always exist. Soon fear feels everywhere. But the same rule applies in the opposite direction. If you focus on solutions, solutions begin to appear. Not magically. Not instantly. But gradually, quietly, realistically. When your attention shifts from what if everything goes wrong to what can I do next, something changes inside you. Your breathing softens. Your thoughts slow down. Your body feels less tense. You don't suddenly have all the answers. But you regain something more important than answers. You regain clarity. The human mind was never meant to handle everything at once. We live in a world that constantly demands attention. Notifications. News. Opinions. Problems that aren't even ours. Pain that belongs to people we've never met. Every day we load our minds with more than they were designed to carry. And then we wonder why we feel overwhelmed. Your mind is powerful, but it has limits. When you try to focus on everything, you end up focusing on nothing. Your thoughts scatter. Your emotions clash. Your energy drains. The noise becomes constant and calm starts to feel impossible. That's why chaos feels exhausting. It's not just what's happening around you. It's what you're allowing inside. So stop feeding it chaos. This doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means choosing what deserves your attention. Not every problem needs your emotional investment. Not every opinion deserves space in your head. Not every negative thought is telling the truth. You don't have to carry everything you see. Limit distractions, not because distractions are evil, but because your focus is valuable. Every time you switch your attention, your mind pays a price. It loses depth. It loses presence. It loses peace. Constant scrolling. Endless comparisons. Background noise that never stops. All of it fragments your attention. When your attention is scattered, your emotions follow. Reducing distractions isn't about discipline alone. It's about kindness toward yourself. It's about giving your mind room to breathe. Silence isn't empty. It's restorative. In quiet moments, your thoughts organize themselves. Your nervous system calms. You remember who you are beneath the noise. Reduce negativity not by pretending it doesn't exist, but by refusing to drown in it. Negativity spreads easily. One complaint leads to another. One bad headline turns into 10. One critical thought becomes a pattern. And slowly, negativity starts to feel normal. But negativity is not neutral. It shapes how you see the world. It narrows your perspective. It convinces you that problems are bigger than solutions, that threats are everywhere, that calm is fragile. Protect your attention like you would protect something precious, because it is. Your attention shapes your reality more than circumstances ever could. Where your attention goes, your emotions follow. Where your emotions go, your actions follow. And your actions quietly build your life. A focused mind doesn't mean a rigid mind. It means a clear one. A mind that knows where to rest. A mind that doesn't chase every passing thought. A mind that can observe without reacting to everything. When your mind is focused, you don't panic easily. You don't spiral as quickly. You don't feel pulled in 10 directions at once. Even in difficult situations, there's a sense of inner steadiness. You respond instead of react. You think instead of explode. A focused mind stays calm in any situation, not because the situation is easy, but because your attention isn't scattered across fear, noise, and imagined outcomes. Calm isn't the absence of problems. It's the presence of control over where your mind goes. This is why two people can face the same challenge and experience it completely differently. One feels overwhelmed and powerless. The other feels grounded and capable. The difference isn't intelligence or strength. It's focus. One mind is feeding fear. The other is feeding solutions. You don't need to control the world to feel calm. You need to control your attention. When you choose what you focus on, you choose how you experience life. You choose what grows inside you. Fear grows when it's fed. Peace grows the same way. Confidence grows the same way. Clarity grows the same way. Every day, quietly, without drama, you are shaping your inner world by what you focus on. You may not notice it in the moment, but over time, it becomes impossible to ignore. So choose carefully. Not everything deserves your attention. Not everything deserves your energy. Not everything deserves space in your mind. Focus on what helps. Focus on what heals. Focus on what moves you forward. Because what you focus on grows. Failure is not the enemy. Your reaction to failure is. Most people don't realize this at first. They think failure itself is the problem, the missed opportunity, the rejection, the mistake, the plan that didn't work. They blame the outcome. They point at the moment everything went wrong and say, that ruined me. But the truth is quieter and harder to accept. Failure just shows up. It doesn't decide what happens next. You do. I didn't understand this for a long time. For years, failure felt personal. Every time something didn't work, it felt like proof. Proof that I wasn't good enough. Proof that I started too late. Proof that I should have known better. Failure didn't just hurt my plans, it attacked my identity. And my reaction to it, that's what kept holding me back. The first big failure I remember wasn't dramatic. No big audience. No public collapse. It was private. A goal I had been working toward quietly, telling only a few people about, failed. Not because I didn't try, but because things didn't line up the way I hoped they would. When I realized it wasn't going to work, my chest felt heavy. My stomach tightened. My thoughts turned sharp and unforgiving. I remember sitting alone, staring at nothing, replaying every step. Every decision. Every small mistake that might have led here. My mind kept asking the same question again and again. What's wrong with you? That was my reaction to failure. Not curiosity. Not reflection. Self-attack. At the time, I thought this reaction meant I cared. I thought being hard on myself would make me better next time. I thought if I punished myself enough mentally, I'd somehow earn future success. But that wasn't discipline. It was fear wearing a serious face. Failure made me want to quit. Not immediately, not out loud, but internally. It planted a quiet desire to stop trying so I wouldn't have to feel this again. That's how failure defeats most people. Not by stopping them, but by convincing them to stop themselves. If failure makes you quit, your mind is untrained. An untrained mind sees failure as an ending. Says this is it. This is where it proves you're not capable. It takes one setback and stretches it into a permanent story. It turns a moment into a label. I carried that untrained mindset for a long time. Each failure stacked on top of the previous one, not as lessons but as weight. I moved slower. I hesitated more. I second-guessed decisions before even making them. The fear of failing again started shaping my choices more than my goals did. And that's when failure truly becomes dangerous. Not when it happens, but when it controls how you move afterward. There was a point when I noticed something strange. I wasn't failing more than others. I was just reacting differently. People around me failed too. Some even failed harder. But they didn't disappear. They didn't spiral the way I did. They paused, adjusted, and tried again. They looked tired sometimes, frustrated sometimes, but not defeated. That's when it hit me. Failure wasn't breaking me. My reaction to it was. If failure makes you adjust, your mind is evolving. This shift didn't happen overnight. It wasn't some sudden moment of clarity where everything changed. It started small, almost unnoticeable. The next time something didn't work, I still felt the disappointment. The tight chest. The urge to shut down. But instead of immediately turning against myself, I asked a different question. Not, why am I like this? But, what actually happened? That question alone changed the tone of my thoughts. It pulled me out of emotion and into observation. Instead of drowning in the feeling of failure, I stood next to it and looked at it. I realized failure is full of information, but only if you're calm enough to listen. Most people are too emotional to learn from failure. They react before they reflect. They either quit or distract themselves. They don't sit with it long enough to understand it. But when you slow down, failure starts teaching. It teaches timing. It teaches preparation. It teaches limits. It teaches patience. Not in a harsh way. In a quiet, practical way. The more I allowed myself to adjust instead of quit, the less powerful failure felt. It was still uncomfortable, but it wasn't threatening anymore. It became part of the process instead of a verdict. Winning minds don't avoid failure. They use it. This was another hard truth to accept. For a long time, I believed confident people were confident because things worked out for them. I thought they were winning because they avoided mistakes. But the more I observed, the clearer it became. They weren't avoiding failure. They were just less afraid of it. They didn't see failure as something to hide from. They saw it as feedback. When something failed, they didn't panic. They adjusted. When something didn't work, they didn't collapse. They refined. Their confidence didn't come from constant success. It came from knowing they could handle failure without losing themselves. That's what a winning mind really is. Not a mind that never falls, but a mind that doesn't break when it does. I started practicing this consciously. When a plan failed, I resisted the urge to immediately label it as a disaster. I gave myself space to feel disappointed, but I didn't let that feeling decide my next move. I wrote things down. What went wrong? What I underestimated? What I ignored? What I rushed? Failure became less emotional and more instructional. And something surprising happened. The fear started to fade. Not because failure stopped happening, but because I trusted myself to handle it better. Every setback teaches control, patience, and resilience. Control doesn't mean controlling outcomes. It means controlling your response. It means not letting emotions hijack your behavior. Early on, every failure triggered impulsive decisions. I'd either quit too fast or jump into something new just to escape the discomfort. There was no control, only reaction. But setbacks taught me to pause, to breathe before responding, to separate emotion from action. That control spilled into other areas of life too. Conversations, decisions, stressful moments. Failure trained me to stay steady when things didn't go my way. Patience came next. Failure is slow. Learning from it is slower. At first, I wanted instant corrections and quick results. I wanted proof that adjusting was working. But patience taught me to trust the process even when progress wasn't visible. It taught me that growth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it happens quietly, in how you think, how you prepare, how you respond. Resilience was the biggest lesson. Not the loud, dramatic kind where you feel invincible, but the quiet kind where you simply don't give up. Where you show up again a little wiser, a little calmer, a little stronger. Where failure no longer scares you away from effort. This changed how you spoke to people. Your words became calmer, more intentional. You no longer needed to win conversations. You needed clarity. This changed how you made decisions. You didn't choose based on panic or pressure. You chose based on values. This changed how you saw yourself. You stopped thinking of yourself as reactive or emotional. You started seeing yourself as aware. Awareness became your real power. Not the absence of emotion. Not emotional numbness. But emotional leadership. You were no longer dragged by every feeling that passed through you. You were the one steering. There were still hard days. Still moments where emotions hit strong. Still times you slipped and reacted. But even then you noticed it faster. You learned from it instead of judging yourself. Progress wasn't perfection. It was presence. And slowly people around you noticed the difference. You didn't get pulled into unnecessary drama. You didn't escalate conflict. You didn't crumble under pressure the way you used to. Your calm felt different. Grounded. Real. Not because you didn't feel deeply, but because you didn't surrender control. That's real power. The power to feel without being ruled. The power to pause without running. The power to choose your response instead of obeying impulse. A mastered mind feels emotions, but it decides the next move. And once you experience that kind of control, you understand something most people never do. Strength isn't loud. Control isn't cold. And power isn't found in reaction. It's found in awareness. And that awareness changes everything. Mastery is built daily. Not in one dramatic moment. Not in a sudden burst of motivation. It's built quietly in ways most people never see. It's built in the small choices you make when no one is watching. The kind of choices that don't look impressive on the outside but slowly reshape who you are on the inside. Most people imagine mastery as a destination. A point where everything finally feels easy. Where confidence is permanent. Where doubt disappears. But mastery isn't a place you arrive at. It's a rhythm you learn to live in. A way of moving through your days with intention instead of impulse. It begins in the morning. Not with your phone. Not with noise. Not with rushing. It begins the moment you open your eyes and decide how you're going to enter the day. There was a time when mornings felt heavy. You'd wake up already tired, already anxious, already behind. Your mind would jump straight into problems. Messages unanswered. Tasks unfinished. Worries waiting for you like a list you didn't ask for. Before your feet even touched the floor, your nervous system was already tense. And that tension followed you everywhere. So one day you tried something different. Not because you felt calm, but because you were tired of feeling rushed. You slowed the morning down. You sat for a moment instead of grabbing the phone. You took a few quiet breaths. Nothing fancy. Just enough to remind your body that you weren't in danger. That you didn't need to sprint into the day. At first it felt unnatural. Your mind wanted stimulation. Your hands wanted movement. Silence felt uncomfortable, like something was missing. But slowly something changed. The day didn't feel as sharp. You noticed your thoughts before they pulled you away. You spoke less but more intentionally. You reacted slower. You felt more grounded even when things didn't go as planned. Starting mornings calmly didn't fix your life overnight. But it changed the tone. And tone matters more than people realize. Because how you start the day often decides how you handle everything that comes after. As the day moved on, challenges still appeared. Stress didn't disappear. People still tested your patience. Problems still needed solutions. But now you weren't meeting them in a rushed state. You weren't already depleted before noon. You began to notice your inner voice more clearly. That voice had always been there. Quiet sometimes. Loud at other times. Especially when you made mistakes. Before it spoke harshly. It rushed to judgment. It told you that you weren't enough, that you were behind, that others were doing better, that you should be further along by now. You didn't realize how often you spoke to yourself that way. It felt normal. Almost automatic. But one evening after a long day, you caught the voice mid-sentence. Right after a small mistake. It was familiar. Sure. Unforgiving. And you paused. You asked yourself something simple. Would I speak to someone I love like this? The answer was obvious. So you tried something new. Not positive affirmations shouted in the mirror. Not fake confidence. Just strength. Calm strength. Instead of saying, I always mess this up, you said, I'm learning. Instead of, I'm not good enough, you said, I'm getting better. Instead of, what's wrong with me, you said, what can I do differently next time? It felt awkward at first. almost forced. Your mind resisted. It wanted the old script. It wanted criticism because criticism felt familiar. But you kept going. Speaking to yourself with strength didn't make you arrogant. It didn't make you lazy. It made you steady. You noticed you recovered faster from mistakes. You didn't spiral as deeply. You didn't give up as easily. You trusted yourself more, not because you were perfect, but because you were fair to yourself. That fairness created space. And in that space, something unexpected grew: stillness. Stillness wasn't silence. It wasn't emptiness. It was the ability to sit with your thoughts without needing to escape them. At first, stillness was uncomfortable. When you stopped distracting yourself, emotions surfaced. Thoughts you'd been avoiding knocked on the door. Regrets, fears, old conversations, old wounds. Your instinct was to move, to check something, to scroll, to stay busy. But you stayed. You practiced stillness in small moments, while waiting, while walking, while sitting alone at night. You didn't try to control your thoughts. You just observed them. And slowly they lost their grip. You realized that thoughts are not commands. Feelings are not orders. They rise, peak, and fall if you don't chase them. This was new. Before, every emotion demanded action. Anger needed a response. Anxiety needed reassurance. Sadness needed distraction. Now, you let emotions pass through without turning them into decisions. This changed how you reacted to the world. Someone said something triggering. You felt it. The tightness. The heat. The urge to respond. But you didn't. You paused. Not because you were weak. Because you were aware. You noticed the reaction forming before it escaped your mouth. You breathed. You waited. Sometimes you still reacted. You're human. Training doesn't mean perfection. But over time the pauses grew longer. The reactions softened. The control strengthened. You realized something important. Controlling reactions isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about choosing when and how to express them. You still spoke up. You still set boundaries. You still addressed issues. But you did it from clarity, not impulse. This protected your energy. Days no longer felt as draining. Conflicts didn't follow you home. You slept better because your mind wasn't replaying every conversation on a loop. At night, something else became part of your rhythm. Reflection. Not overthinking. Not judging. Reflecting. You looked back at the day without emotion. You noticed what went well. You noticed what didn't. You asked simple questions. Where did I stay calm? Where did I react? What did I learn today? Some days the answers were encouraging. Other days they weren't. But you didn't punish yourself. You understood that mastery is built daily. Through repetition. Through awareness. Through small adjustments. Ending days with reflection gave the day meaning. Even the hard days. Especially the hard days. Nothing felt wasted anymore. A bad interaction became feedback. A mistake became information. A difficult emotion became a signal. And slowly, almost without noticing, your brain began to change. You reacted less. You thought more clearly. You trusted yourself under pressure. You didn't feel the need to prove yourself as often. You felt stronger mentally, but not in a loud way. In a quiet way. The kind of strength that doesn't need validation. The kind of strength that stays steady when things don't go your way. The kind of strength that knows emotions will pass but character remains. This is how habits work. They don't announce themselves. They shape you silently. A calm morning here. A strong inner sentence there. A moment of stillness. A paused reaction. An honest reflection at night. Individually they feel small. Almost insignificant. Together they rewire the brain. Neural pathways shift. The nervous system learns safety. The mind learns patience. The body learns regulation. Mental strength is not born. It's trained. Trained through repetition. Trained through awareness. Trained through choosing growth over comfort again and again. Some days you'll forget. You'll rush. You'll react. You'll skip the habits. That doesn't erase the progress. Because mastery isn't about never slipping. It's about returning. Returning to calm. Returning to strength. Returning to intention. Daily. And one day you'll realize something quietly profound. You don't feel overwhelmed as often. You don't react as quickly. You don't doubt yourself as deeply. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. And it happened the only way real strength ever does. Slowly. Daily. On purpose. You will face pressure. You will face loss. You will face uncertainty. That's life. No matter who you are or where you come from, these things arrive without warning. They don't ask if you're ready. They don't care how hard you've already tried. One day life feels steady, familiar, almost predictable. And then suddenly, something shifts. The phone call changes your mood. A mistake costs you something important. A silence replaces the certainty you once had. Pressure shows up when expectations pile on your shoulders. When people need answers you don't have yet. When time feels short and the stakes feel high. It presses against your chest, tightens your breath, and makes even simple decisions feel heavy. Loss comes quietly sometimes and violently at other times. It can be the loss of a person, a relationship, an opportunity, or even the version of yourself you thought you'd be by now. Loss leaves a hollow space. It teaches you how quickly things can disappear and how little control you really have over outcomes. Uncertainty is the constant background noise of life. It's waking up not knowing if your efforts will pay off. It's moving forward without guarantees. It's standing at a crossroads with no clear sign pointing in the right direction. This is life. And there's no way around it. But there is one thing you don't have to lose. You don't have to lose control. Most people think control comes from managing situations, fixing everything, predicting outcomes, making sure nothing goes wrong. But that kind of control is an illusion. Situations will change no matter how careful you are. People will disappoint you no matter how kind you are. Plans will fail no matter how prepared you feel. Real control lives somewhere else. It lives inside your mind. When pressure hits, your mind reacts first. Your thoughts start racing. Worst-case scenarios appear instantly. Your body responds before logic even arrives. Heart rate increases. Muscles tense. Breathing becomes shallow. In that moment, it feels like the pressure owns you. But it doesn't have to. The difference between being overwhelmed and being grounded is not the situation itself. It's how your mind interprets it. When you master your mind, pressure doesn't disappear. But it becomes manageable. It stops feeling like an enemy and starts feeling like a signal. A reminder to slow down, focus, and take the next right step instead of trying to solve everything at once. You realize you don't need to carry tomorrow today. Loss works the same way. When something is taken from you, the pain is real. Mastering your mind doesn't mean pretending it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean suppressing grief or forcing positivity. It means allowing yourself to feel the pain without letting it define you. Your mind learns the difference between feeling sadness and becoming consumed by it. Between remembering what was and being trapped there forever. You learn to sit with the ache, breathe through it, and slowly understand that loss, while painful, does not erase your future. Stress often feels like a permanent state when you're inside it. Like it will never end. Like this pressure, this exhaustion, this mental weight is your new normal. But when you master your mind, stress becomes temporary. You stop adding extra weight to it. You stop replaying conversations that already happened. You stop worrying about outcomes you can't control yet. You deal with what's in front of you right now and let the rest wait its turn. Stress loses its power when you stop feeding it with constant attention. Fear is one of the most misunderstood emotions. Most people think fear is weakness. Something to eliminate. Something to hide from. But fear isn't the enemy. Fear is guidance. It shows you where you care. It shows you what matters. It shows you where growth is possible. When your mind is untrained, fear controls you. It makes decisions for you. It convinces you to avoid, delay, and retreat. It keeps you small by making discomfort feel dangerous. But when you master your mind, fear becomes information. You listen to it without obeying it. You acknowledge it without letting it steer your life. You learn when fear is warning you of real danger and when it's simply reacting to unfamiliar territory. Strength isn't the absence of fear. It's the ability to move forward while fear is present. Life doesn't reward you with easy situations. It doesn't pause to give you time to catch up. It doesn't soften its challenges just because you've already been through enough. You don't win because situations are easy. You win because your mind is strong. A strong mind doesn't mean you're calm all the time. It doesn't mean you never doubt yourself. It doesn't mean you always know what to do. It means you don't fall apart when things get hard. It means you can feel pressure and still think clearly. It means you can experience loss and still keep going. It means you can face uncertainty without freezing. Strength is built quietly in moments no one sees. It's built when you pause instead of reacting. When you breathe instead of exploding. When you choose patience over panic. Every time you respond intentionally instead of emotionally, you train your mind. Every time you stay present instead of spiraling, you gain control. Every time you accept what you can't change and focus on what you can, your inner strength grows. Over time, something shifts. Problems don't feel smaller, but you feel bigger than them. Stress still shows up, but it doesn't stay as long. Fear still whispers, but it no longer decides your direction. You start trusting yourself. Not because life is easy, but because you know you can handle it. That trust changes how you move through the world. You stop rushing. You stop forcing outcomes. You stop needing constant reassurance. You become steady even when things around you are not. Life will still test you. Pressure will return in new forms. Loss will show up in ways you didn't expect. Uncertainty will always exist somewhere ahead. But you won't be the same person facing them. You'll have a stronger mind, a calmer response, a deeper understanding that no matter what happens outside of you, you have control over what happens within you. And that control changes everything. Because when you master your mind, life no longer owns you. You move through it with strength, clarity, and quiet confidence. Not because the world is gentle, but because you are strong enough to face it. You don't need perfect conditions. You need mental control. You don't need to change the world. You need to train your mind. Because when your mind is mastered, no situation can defeat you. Master your mind, and you win anywhere.